Hello, everyone, and welcome to this quick introduction to anxiety and the treatment of anxiety. My name is Matt Gamble. I'm a resident in counseling in the state of Virginia. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in here to our discussion today. So, what is anxiety? Anxiety is a natural response to a stressful situation. Keep in mind the idea of stress there. We'll be seeing that throughout today's discussion. Anxiety is an alert by the amygdala that the body is or may be in danger. And that may be in danger ties back to stressful situations. So you notice I mentioned the amygdala here. So the amygdala is a small almond-shaped member of the limbic brain. The limbic brain is also known as the reptilian brain. It's one of the older sections of the brain. So these brain sections go from the brain stem, which is at the top of the spinal cord, to the limbic brain or the reptilian brain. Then we go into the frontal cortex, and the frontal cortex sits right behind your forehead. The reptilian brain or the limbic brain is responsible for our emotional responses. That's the limbic brain is where emotions are housed. The amygdala, which is located in the limbic brain, serves as the smoke detector for the body. So all incoming information from your five senses, sight, smell, sound, all of that information is first filtered through the amygdala, and the amygdala scans that information for signs of danger. And when the amygdala identifies that there may be danger in the environment, then it sets off a signal to the frontal cortex and to other parts of the brain indicating, hey, we're in danger, we need to do something. Then there is a dump of stress hormones, cortisol and others, into the bloodstream that results from the triggering of the smoke detector, the amygdala. That feels similar to panic. If you are familiar with or have ever had panic episodes, you know what that feels like. So some symptoms of anxiety, I'm sure a lot of people know exactly what these are. Feeling nervous, restless, on edge. You feel like there's an impending sense of panic or doom, or that you're in a persistent state of danger. Those are kind of emotional symptoms of anxiety. Some physical or bodily symptoms of anxiety include increased heart rate, heart palpitations, breathing rapidly, which can lead to hyperventilation, sweating, shaking or trembling, feeling tired, fatigued, or weak, having trouble concentrating, feeling distracted all the time, trouble sleeping, fatigability, GI problems. A lot of times when people will start feeling nervous or anxious, the stomach starts to rumble, starts turning. Uncontrollable worry is an important symptom of anxiety to consider. And then having an uncontrollable urge to avoid anxiety triggering situations or stimuli. So those are the physical and behavioral symptoms of anxiety that we normally look for when making a diagnosis of anxiety disorder, any of the anxiety disorders. There are several. So the way I diagnose most mental health conditions is I start out with the most least intrusive severity of a diagnosis. So if I suspect that a client has generalized anxiety disorder, I will start out with a diagnosis of something simple like unspecified anxiety disorder. That way I have a lot of wiggle room in treatment options, and I'm not just throwing a diagnosis at a person like generalized anxiety disorder. So now we're getting into some of the more neurological aspects of anxiety. So your experience of anxiety is controlled by two parts of the human nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. Combined, these two comprise the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic, when you hear the word autonomic, think automatic. These two nervous systems, the sympathetic and parasympathetic, control things in the body that you do not have to think about. Have you ever noticed that you do not have to think about your heartbeat to get your heart to actually beat. No, those are things that just happen on their own. Respiration, that's the same with respiration. Digestion, those are all controlled by the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system takes over at night when you're sleeping, essentially, or whenever you're feeling relaxed. The parasympathetic nervous system has taken over. The parasympathetic nervous system is also known as the rest and digest system because, like I said, when you're at a state of rest, this nervous system is in charge of the body. At night, when you're sleeping, when your food is digesting, that's also thanks to this system here. The parasympathetic nervous system promotes feelings of relaxation, um, and it reduces excitation of the sympathetic nervous system. So that's important to consider here in just a moment. So this is a breakdown of the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. You will notice that they're not labeled as parasympathetic. Instead, they're labeled as parasympathicus. I don't know why that is, but that's what they are, and this is the best image I could find. Green is the parasympathetic. These are things that happen generally when you're at rest or when you're sleeping. Your pupils constrict because you're in the dark. Saliva production increases. You have a reduced heart rate. Your bronchial or air tubes constrict. The digestive organs become stimulated, hence leading to digestion of food. Urinary, a constriction of the urinary bladder. That's why you always have to urinate once you wake up, because the opposite is happening when the sympathetic nervous system is taking place. So the sympathetic nervous system over here dilates the pupils or makes them wider, letting more light into your eye. Saliva production is reduced. The bronchial tubes open up. Your breathing tubes open up. There's a rise in your heart rate. Digestive organs start to slow down. There's a relaxation of the urinary bladder, meaning you have to go urinate a little more frequently than if you were asleep. So yes. So essentially what happens in, we may come back to this image here in just a moment. So yes, we will, I would like to go back to that image. Let me say that. Yeah, it's not going to let me to. So what happens during anxiety is, I would like to do that. It's not going. So what happens during anxiety, a panic episode or anxiety, they're essentially the same thing. Panic is just a bit more severe than anxiety is. What happens during an episode of feeling anxiety is there's a overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system. That's your experience of anxiety. That comes from the sympathetic nervous system. And what we do, or what I as a mental health professional teach people to do to reduce their experience of anxiety, is to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. If you recall in that from a previous slide, the parasympathetic nervous system kind of has control over the sympathetic nervous system. So both of those nervous systems cannot be stimulated or activated at the same time. It's one or the other. They cannot both move simultaneously in a state of excitation or inhibition. So when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, you're going to feel anxiety, panic, things of that nature, symptoms of anxiety that we discussed earlier. What we want to do is to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which naturally brings this one down. And I'll get to in a few minutes to how we stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. That's on another slide. So I also want to mention these are things that contribute to anxiety. These are contributing factors, things that can cause or promote anxiety. Again, stress pops up. So anxiety is actually a reaction to stress. As I say that, I want you to consider your own personal stressors. What are the primary stressors in your life, and how could you mediate those, or identify a method or a means by which you can lessen the stress response of those things? Uh, at its heart, anxiety is a protective factor that triggers bodily action. Think of it as if you were on the plains of the Serengeti and you're being stalked by a lion. You're going to feel some anxiety because that is a protective factor. Your body, the amygdala, has indicated to you or told you from scanning the information that you're seeing visually or perhaps hearing also that there is a lion off in the distance. It's been following you for a while. The amygdala goes into an active state of saying, "Hey, we've got danger going on. You need to feel some anxiety about this and figure out something to do." So that's the protective factors of anxiety. Anxiety is a signal that danger is nearby and you need to get out of that situation. So, some other contributing factors to anxiety is trauma. At its heart, trauma is a dysregulation of the amygdala. If you've experienced a traumatic event, then your amygdala and your sensory information, you're always going to be looking for danger. That's the hypervigilance. That's common in diagnoses like PTSD. um, so yes, trauma is causes a dysregulation of the amygdala. Caffeine and other stimulating medications or substances can exacerbate or worsen anxiety. Keep that in mind. So, things that you can do to de escalate the sympathetic nervous system or bring the sympathetic nervous system down and activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So, meditation has been proven through multiple studies, multiple types of studies, meta analyses, which is an analysis of other studies just to make sure everything looks good in those. Those are considered the gold standard for proving that something works is a meta-analysis. When you have several meta-analyses of studies and they all indicate that something is effective at treating X, Y, or Z, we tend to listen to that. so, uh, so yes, meditation stimulates or activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which causes a reduction in the sympathetic nervous system or your experience of anxiety. If you do just a quick Google search for meditation, you'll find that there are a variety of meditation practices. There are mindfulness meditation, just all sorts of them. I only really associate myself with mindfulness meditation. There are a variety of others out there. Through research, none have been found to be better than any other. So I think there is Vedantic meditation, mindfulness meditation, and others. One is not better than the other. So long as you are following the practices of that meditation practice, you will experience the results. There's a variety of apps that exist to help you that remind you to meditate or take 5 minutes for yourself. What actually helps with meditation, why meditation works, is the deep breathing exercises that accompany it. So mindfulness meditation, there's a lot of deep breathing. You're paying attention to the 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 act of breathing, the inhalation and the exhalation. That's what actually triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps reduce your anxiety. It's the deep breathing that stimulates that. It's not necessarily the meditation itself, but the breathing practices that are associated with meditation. That's what actually is of benefit. It's also worth noting that medications such as benzodiazepines, Klonopin, Xanax, Valium, medications of those, only work on the sympathetic nervous system. Since this is where your anxiety is housed, is in the sympathetic nervous system, then it makes sense that benzodiazepines or Xanax, Klonopin, or Valium would work on that nervous system. Those are central nervous system depressants, benzodiazepines are, meaning they depress your entire central nervous system. So the entire autonomic nervous system is affected by benzodiazepines. Generally, that's not something we want, but they've been around for ages and people still use them. They're also a very addictive substance. You have to be careful about those. In a study, Hogue et al. 2023, so this is a recent study, identified that meditation was actually just as effective as medication use in the treatment of anxiety. So the meditation was compared with Lexapro. Lexapro is a mood stabilizer, but it's also used to help with anxiety, the symptoms of anxiety. So In this study, Hogue et al. 2023 showed that the medication Lexapro was just as effective as meditation at management of anxiety symptoms. That's actually been shown in multiple other studies that meditation is just as effective as pharmacological or medication treatment of anxiety. And there's the reference for Hogue. I hope this quick little dive into anxiety and the sort of neurological components of anxiety has been beneficial. If you have any requests for videos that I could do in the future, please leave those in a comment. I will check those out and create videos as appropriate. Have a wonderful day.